which have resulted in vast area of hydrocarbon-contaminated lands and attracted negative consequences. For example, those who live in and around the Port Harcourt environment cannot forget the soot, which currently ravages the entire nooks and crannies of the city.
So you can bring this
Causing particles from the soot can cause breathing issues, including asthma, bronchitis, coronary heart diseases, and even cancer. It is against this background that IoD Nigeria, being a promoter of corporate governance and capacity development for directors, has deemed it necessary to package this event through her Port Harcourt zone. It is therefore my honor and privilege to welcome most especially the President and Chairman of Council of IoD Nigeria, Chief Chris Okonowo, the Keynote Speaker, Dr. Ferdinand Giadon, the Moderator, Mr. Innocent Eyala Harry, and our discussants, the Honorable Commissioner of Environment, Delta State, Honorable Christian Onobwa, Mr. Jesse Martin Manufo, and the last, but by no means the least, Chief Professor Jasper Jumbo. It's also my privilege to welcome other stakeholders and participants to this seminar. It is hoped that at the end of this seminar, directors and other stakeholders would have an understanding of issues and be able to profile the way forward to the destruction of the ecosystem, habitat destruction, pollution, and other factors that contribute to environmental degradation. I welcome you all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for that welcome remark. Now we'll call on the President and Chairman of Council of the Institute of Directors Nigeria, Chief Chris Okonowo, for his welcome address. President.
Thank you, Rebecca. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Our distinguished keynote speaker, panelist, and moderator, our first Vice President, Dr. Ijejidema, FIOD, second Vice President, Alhaji Tijani Borodo, FIOD, other members of the Council of Governing Council of the Institute, esteemed members of the Institute, distinguished participants, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Governing Council of the Institute of Directors Nigeria, I am very delighted to join Mr. Chidi Okoro, MIOD Chairman of the Port Harcourt Zone of IoD Nigeria, to welcome you all to this edition of our Stakeholders Forum with the theme, Environmental Degradation, Issues and the Way Forward. I wish to especially welcome our distinguished keynote speaker, panelists and moderators at this event in the persons of Dr. Ferdinand Giadon, a senior lecturer of the Geology Department, University of Port Harcourt. Of course, our moderator and our member, the fellow of the Institute, Mr. Innocent Eyala Harry, the chairman of Dynam International. Of course, Honorable Chris Onogba, Honorable Commissioner for Environment in Delta State, Chief Professor Jasper F. Jumbo, MIOD Chairman, CEO, Niger Delta Projects Consortium Limited, and Mr. Jesse Martin Manufo, Head Environmental Stakeholder Democracy Network. I'm most excited to note that this team of experts in their various endeavors brings to us today the wealth of knowledge and decades of experience to discuss the theme of this event, an issue that is very important and critical to our very existence as individuals, businesses, and a nation. I am indeed very proud to welcome everyone and to share in our experience and contribute meaningfully to this discourse. I also wish to welcome all other eminent personalities, guests, associates, and friends of our great institute at this event. Ladies and gentlemen, the choice of the theme for this event has been carefully made, among other options, in recognition of the issues of environmental degradation and impact across the Niger Delta region, in particular, and our country, Nigeria, in general. As you may be aware, our economic activities and growth as a nation have come at a cost to the Niger Delta environment and the country at large. Today, nowhere have these impacts been felt more precisely than in the oil and gas producing regions of Nigeria, where years of non-compliance with environmental laws and policies have resulted in massive air and water pollution and vast areas of hydrocarbon-contaminated lands and attendant negative consequences. It is as a result of the above scenario that we as an institute and a big voice in the organized private sector have deemed it necessary to host this event to enable directors and other stakeholders have an understanding of the issues and articulate necessary steps on the way forward. To this end, this event is specifically organized to achieve, among others, the following. 1, to raise awareness and understanding of the environmental dimension of sustainable development issues in Nigeria. 2, to facilitate information sharing on environmental issues among policymakers, private sector actors, and civil society representatives. 3, promote exchange of information and lessons learned among stakeholders. 4, create further awareness on the impact of environmental degradation and expectations from all stakeholders. 5, open an agenda for further discussions in developing a framework for the effective implementation of existing regulations on the matter. 6, facilitate an agenda that ensures that individuals and commissions and communities are given fair attention by the government and other stakeholders on this issue. 7, facilitate the development of a policy and institutional support framework that promotes an inclusion of all stakeholders on the subject matter. And 8, facilitate a conversation amongst all stakeholders on the way forward. To ensure a successful implementation of the outcome of this event, it is expected that the Institute would work with teams of relevant stakeholders in collaboration with our governments. Distinguished directors and leaders, ladies and gentlemen, I wish to accordingly encourage all of us to be open-minded and participate actively in this forum, so as to take advantage of the enormous wealth of experience of our keynote speaker, panelists, and indeed the moderator. I wish to thank the chairman and members of the executive committee of the Port Harcourt zone of the Institute and our research and advocacy committee, as well as the management of the IoD Secretariat for organizing this important event. Before I close, I'd just like to say that please note that COVID-19 is still very much with us, and it's getting much more dangerous with the new variants that we see. Please keep safe and stay healthy. And as much as possible, please get the vaccination, get your jab as quickly as possible, so we can prevent any untoward activity or event. I thank you all for your attention, and I wish you good morning.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, for that very insightful welcome remark. Now we'll hand over to the moderator of today's program, Mr. Innocent Yalahari, who will be presenting a 2-minute video, which would pretty much set the tone for what we'll have the discussions will be today. So over to you, Mr. Yalahari.
Thank you very much, Imabo. Let me thank the President and Chairman of Council for being with us today, and indeed all the participants. We're going to be watching a 2-minute video, which is just the tip of the iceberg, but clearly it set the tone for our conversation today. Can we have a video on, please?
I was a healthy child, but when they started the suits, I realized I was waking up every morning and I was sneezing for like more than 10 or 20 times. This is what's happening in Port Harcourt, and you can't just leave your windows open for an hour. Even the fan is black and all covered with soot. The TV, they're all covered with soot. When I sneeze and I use a handkerchief or something, I'll see black traces of black soot or blood. The doctor said that yes, these suits can cause what I'm going through. So the doctor just said that it cannot be cured, except I have to move from this environment to somewhere that is soot-free. Anytime I go to sleep, I make sure I have to carry my inhaler, my drugs. Those ones are like my first go-to when the reaction starts. But if it gets serious, then I have to do steam inhalation where I use hot water to breathe in. There was a river behind us, and we could just stroll down there, even in the evening, any time of the day, to get fish or something. But now you're going to the river bank and you're going to see oil on the soil. There are no fishes anymore.
Thank you very much. Now, I chose that video just to make an opening remark about what the level of devastation might be. Of course, the devastation is not just the black soot, which is so prevalent in River State as we speak. Ever since oil was discovered in 1953, it came with a huge cost to the Niger Delta region, starting from devastation of farmlands, devastation of agricultural products and farms, devastation of aquatic life, and lately, devastation caused by the global pipeline, caused by militants and illegal refineries. Clearly, all these have taken a toll on the ecosystem of the Niger Delta and by extension Nigeria. Today, we've assembled a panel of eminent discussants who will be taking this subject matter from 3 broad perspectives. The Honorable Commissioner for Agriculture, Chris Onova, will talk about the environment and government legislations, whereas Mr. Jesse Martins will, from the stakeholders' democracy, will look from the NGO's perspective and try to appraise what the government and the NGOs are doing. Professor Jeffrey Jumbo, an expert who has engaged with the local community, with the IOCs and government, will give us the subject matter proper as the problem is, and then select some way forward. But before then, we'll have a keynote speaker who will be presenting the keynote address. And that's going to be from, Dr. Gerdon Ferdinand. Dr. Ferdinand has a doctorate degree in environmental geology from the University of Port Harcourt. He's a consultant with well over a decade's experience in contaminated land and the ecosystem. He currently teaches at the University of Port Harcourt, and he will be sharing his insights from the experience we shall share working with the United Nations Program, UNEP, and then other programs he has been involved with. And hopefully, the discussions will take a cue from there. And my job is to moderate and make sure the subject matter is well done. I welcome you warmly, whilst I invite Dr. Gadam to take the stage. Thank you very much.
Thank you, moderator, Mr. Innocent Harry. It is my singular honor and pleasure to be amongst these very eminent persons to share knowledge on the state of our environment, environmental degradation, and issues and the way forward. Let me share my screen, and so that we can now proceed. Okay, so this morning we shall be discussing environmental degradation and the way forward. If I will start by showing us a photograph, the next slide that shows us, sorry, just, okay. This is the slide that shows two river systems from the Niger Delta region. On the left-hand side, you can see a very pristine river that is devoid of pollution. And also on the right-hand side, you can see a river system that is very seriously polluted. Hello, can you hear me? Am I audible? Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you. I can hear you.
Yeah,
There's a lot of background noise that is coming from somewhere. Maybe somebody should mute their microphones. So this particular slide is talking about a sustainable, healthy environment in Niger Delta. And we are saying that this situation is very possible. So comparing these two pictures, it is safe to say that the river system on the left-hand side of the screen is sustainable, while that one on the right isn't. And that's what we've done to our environment from various activities, especially the one by the oil industry. And then I will start by sharing with us a Cree prophecy that posits thus, that only after the last river has been poisoned, only after the last fish has been caught, then you will find that money cannot be eaten. If we do not sustain our environment, the resources that we need to survive and to live as humans on this planet will not be there. And then you will have money in your pocket, but you will realize that you cannot eat the paper currency in whatever form it is. So this calls us to order, and this puts to mind that we need to do all that we'll have to do to protect our environment. River State and the entire Niger Delta is in grave danger. The environment of the Niger Delta is unseasonably mauled, oiled, and despoiled. Almost every day we hear of yet another problem affecting the environment. We hear of oil spillages and gas leaks, groundwater and surface water pollution, the black soot, air pollution, gas flares, acid rain, climate change impacts, and sea level rise. We also observe land subsidence, domestic and municipal waste management problems, waste oil and industrial effluent discharge. High radiological indices of rivers, increasing cancer cases, infertility, miscarriages and birth defects, destruction of mangrove forests and other wild habitats, land degradation manifesting as coastal riverbank erosion, flooding, the decline and extinction of thousands of animal and plant species, depletion of fish stock within our rivers, dwindling crop yields, Nipah palm and hyacinth, water hyacinth invasion. And if I may say, what a litany of problems. We've listed the problems that face us within the environment. But before we can talk about environmental degradation, I think it will be right for me to now explain what we conceive as the environment, beginning with the components of the environment. The environment can be broadly classified into three subclasses, where we have the physical environment, the biological environment, and the cultural environment. The physical environment is further subdivided into three other subclasses. Here we have the atmosphere, which is the envelope of gases that completely surround the air. It is out of this atmosphere that we have oxygen, that is a vital a resource of the earth, which every organism needs to survive. We have the hydrosphere that consists of all the water bodies on the earth, and the lithosphere, which is a solid crust on which we stand. Then the biological environment is further subdivided into the floral, faunal, and microbial. The floral referring to all the vegetation plants that we have within the earth, which is also a vital resource from where we also get our food. Then the microbial, this is a very important component of the biological environment. In most cases, they are very tiny and invisible to the eyes. Then talking about the cultural environment, it's further divided into three again, where we have the society, we have economics, and we have politics. With these subdivisions, this is what encompasses the environment, which is everything that surrounds the individual. Now, I have decided to posit a more detailed description of the physical environment within the Niger Delta in Rivers State, since I am domiciled in Rivers State and the Institute of Directors, Port Harcourt chapter, is hosting this very august event. And so permit me to describe Rivers State, that covers an estimated area of about 11,000 square kilometers within the wetlands of the Niger Delta. This floodplain constitutes the geomorphology of the state, which is home to over 5 million people. And the state's environment can be broadly constituted into 4 ecological zones, so that we have the coastal barrier islands, we have the mangrove swamp forest, we have the freshwater swamps, and the lowland rainforest. So with these ecological zones of River State, we live and have our being. So talking about the state of environment in parts of River State, I wish to bring to your notice that very recently, and by recently, I mean about 10 years ago, the United Nations published a report on environmental assessment of Ogoniland, and they have brought to fore the types and concentrations of contaminants within Ogoni, albeit the Niger Delta environment. I wish to state here that I have brought out this report because up to date, this is one of the most detailed and internationally acclaimed environmental assessments that have been carried out in the Niger Delta and in these parts of Africa. And the report posits certain findings that is very concerning. Contaminants of concern have been found particularly within the soil, groundwater, and surface water resources. And these pose serious risks to the health and well-being of the people and also the ecosystem. Communities in different parts of River State are especially at risk because of inadequate knowledge, lack of appropriate regulation and enforcement by government agencies and regulators in the industry. Sadly, communities often have little capacity to protecting themselves, and their voices are not heard in political discussions. So the people that bear the brunt of these contamination and compromise of our environment, their voices are not heard. They are not part of discussions. They are not part of decisions that affect their very existence. And that is very sad. Crude oil that is unseasonably spilled into the environment contains many highly toxic constituents that can damage every system in the body. They could be carcinogenic, mutagenic, or outrightly teratogenic. Carcinogenesis refers to the development of cancer within the human system. Of course, to date, cancer is one of the most dreaded diseases that can afflict anyone, and then it's incurable. Mutagenesis refers to a situation where your disease or your condition does not degenerate to the point of cancer, but it has the ability of causing mutations within your body. And teratogenesis is something that affects the fetus, that alters the original constitution, the genetic composition that was handed down to the offspring by the parents. So these have been observed to be consequences that can happen as a result of exposure to hydrocarbon contaminants. And that benzene, a known carcinogen, has been found in groundwaters in Ogoni, and of course in different parts of the Niger Delta at concentration that is 900 times above the maximum contaminant allowable permissible levels. Benzene is known to cause leukemia. Other harmful effects include damage to the lungs, liver, kidney, immune system, depression, infertility, hormonal imbalances, mutations, neurological disorders, birth defects, and etc. I want to point to this August gathering that the African woman is very fecund. I'm just taking on the infertility part that these contaminants of concern can cause. And that in recent times, we are beginning to observe within our communities, within the society, that a lot of our women are finding it difficult to conceive and keep a pregnancy to term. This is quite very, very, very alarming. I'm talking about immune system depression. Now, in the COVID era, we are told that we have to boost our immune systems to be able to resist these opportunistic diseases. But we are living in an environment where our constant and our daily exposure to these contaminants of concern have been known to depress our immune system. So if you escape leukemia, which is the disease of the cancer of the blood, if you escape other carcinogenic consequences of this exposure, then you can also, don't forget that you will be exposed to immune system depression, which will now make you more vulnerable and more susceptible to falling under diseases that naturally you should have been able to fight off by yourself. Then neurological disorders. When we talk about this, then you can see cases of depression or some form of mental imbalances. All these are attributable to the exposure, constant chronic and acute exposure to contaminants of concern coming from petroleum hydrocarbons. So oil pollution also contaminates the food chain and undermines the capacity of the ecosystem to absorb waste and provide the essentials for life. Environmental health is not spared. Environmental health addresses all the physical, chemical, and biological factors external to a person, and all the related factors impacting behaviors and the well-being of an individual. It is targeted towards preventing disease and creating health supportive environments. It refers to the protection against environmental factors that may adversely impact human health or ecological balances, essential to long-term human health and environmental quality. And so what have we got? A degraded environment, a confused and dysfunctional society. Environmental degradation is known to threaten wealth, health, amenity, ultimately threatening the survival of life in the state and on Niger Delta as a whole. Today, we are witnessing increasing levels of poverty, ignorance, and disease as a direct results of environmental degradation. A large segment of the populace subsists directly on the land, and the ever-dwindling productivity of the land has resulted to the general malaise and hopelessness in the state and in the region. What have we got? A degraded environment, which ultimately introduces stress into the system, causing the complete disruption of social harmony with these attendant misunderstandings amongst the people. And then we have politics of suspicion and acrimony, highly irritable society, various forms of violence and general degradation of the morals of our society. People within the region, within the Niger Delta, they are experiencing chronic and acute exposures to all this that causes this disruption in social harmony. We were hitherto known to be very welcoming, very friendly people. But today, brother cannot talk to brother, friend cannot understand friend. And so we have politics of acrimony. People get so angry at things that are merely things that people should actually embrace each other at the end of every contest. So this increasing acrimony, even in the political circles, is leading to a highly irritable society. And this shows us, this is a red flag that shows us that our society is disintegrating. And unless we address these issues, we are heading to we are standing at the precipice and heading into the abyss. Apocalypse. That is exactly what we are going to get if these issues are not addressed. Now, why are we here? Suffice it to state that the Institute of Directors is a very big voice in the organized private sector, and therefore that voice could carry this message much farther. We are here to create further awareness on the impact of environmental degradation and expectations of all stakeholders, open an agenda for further discussions that may develop a framework for the effective implementation of existing regulations on the matter, facilitate an agenda that ensures that individuals and communities are given fair attention from the government and other stakeholders, facilitate the development of a policy and institutional support framework that promotes inclusion of all stakeholders on the matter, facilitate a conversation amongst all stakeholders on the way forward. And therefore, sharing this knowledge this morning with the eminent members of the Institute of Directors and other guests here gathered, it is my desire that you should help amplify this voice, propagate this message to all the nooks and crannies of the Niger Delta and Nigeria at large. We just watched a video, a short video at the introduction of this occasion that shows us the impacts of the black soot of air pollution on individuals in our communities in Port Harcourt. It is heartbreaking when I listen to that lady telling us that they told her that her only solution would be to relocate from Port Harcourt. This is our beloved city. So why should anyone be subjected to this for no just cause? We have to do all that is in our powers to make sure that we stop and reverse the impacts of particularly air pollution at this time. Air is a non-visible form of matter, and it's one of the most important of Earth's resources without which life cannot exist on the planet. It is, however, a sign into which gaseous and particulate matter from anthropogenic and other natural sources are released. The quality of air in Port Harcourt, Rivers State, and in most parts of the Niger Delta have been ranked amongst the top 10 most polluted regions in the world. The black soot descends on the city and day turns to night. The soot is here again, for sure. It was here in 2016, it's here again, and it has become part of our everyday existence. Aerosols and dry deposition are increasingly becoming hazards of air pollution in the state, causing discomfort and aesthetic concerns. The preponderance of black soot phenomenon in Rivers State, particularly in parts of the Niger Delta, at certain times of the year, particularly between December and March, April, is determined by the dynamics of wind flow within the troposphere. On the right-hand side, you can see a map of the world with the red band and the blue band. The red band refers to the position of the ITCZ and the blue in July, and the position of ITCZ in January, March. The position of this convergence zone dictates the amount of mixing and dispersion that can happen within the troposphere. When the two air masses, the maritime air mass and the continental air masses meet, they create what is a doldrum-like situation where two air masses meet, and then they force airs to descend downwards instead of rising upwards. So you have a situation where all the particulates, all the smoke that is released into the air, which normally should have been dispersed, because of the stillness of the air, all these particulates are not dispersed, rather than they now fumigate the environment. These particulates are mostly acidic, and they alter the pH of soils and water bodies, causing rapid deterioration in physical amenities such as the corrosion of roofing sheets, other metallic structures, and even cars. They constitute health hazards to humans when inhaled, causing respiratory ailments, just like the young lady was expressing in that short video, especially for infants, the aged, and those with heart diseases. health hazards of gas pollution. Nigeria flares over 70 million tons of carbon dioxide into the environment per day. If you look on the screen, on the right-hand side, you will see the part of the coastal Nigeria, especially the Niger Delta. All those white spots, this was an imagery taken in the night by NASA. All those white spots you see refer to different gas flares, just all around the Niger Delta. This accounts for 19.79% of global gas flaring. This was measured in 2001, more than Iran, Indonesia combined, making Nigeria the highest gas flaring country in the world. Gas flares cause respiratory disorders in man, leading to kidney and neurological disorders. Poisonous chemicals associated with gas flares include nitrogen oxide, sulfur dioxide, volatile organic compounds like benzene, toluene, xylene, and hydrogen sulfide. Other carcinogens like benzopyrene and dioxins are also released in gas flares. These chemicals intensify asthma, as in the case with the lady that we saw in that video, cause chronic bronchitis and pain. Benzene, as we said, is a well-known cause of leukemia and other diseases of the blood system. Oil pollution and gas leaks are ubiquitous hazards in Rivers State and the parts of the Niger Delta. An NNPC report of 1983 stated thus, and I quote, "We witnessed the slow poisoning of the waters of this country and the destruction of vegetation and agricultural land by oil spills, which occurred during petroleum operations. But since the inception of oil industry in Nigeria, more than 25 years ago, there has been no concern an effective effort on the part of the government, let alone oil operators, to control environmental problems associated with the oil industry." This was an NNPC report issued in 1983. As in 1983, because most of the issues we get today, when you talk about oil pollution in the Delta, most of the IOCs will tell you that it is caused by third-party interference within the system. But we see that as far back as 40 years ago, this situation subsisted, and they also, as NNPC, made this observation. But till date, we have not seen concrete action on part of government and regulators to change this. This is the only country in the world that I know of where these conditions are allowed to subsist. The photographs that you have on the right are not from far-flung places. These are photographs of actual spill situations that happen in Niger Delta. On the bottom picture on the right is an oil spill that happened in Bodo, Ogoni, due to equipment failure. This is a process during when the point of leak was being excavated, and then you can see all the leak that happened. This necessitated the community taking SPDC to the court in the UK, and of course, when they found that they were culpable, they called for out-of-court settlement. The environment has been devastated for over 10 years, subsisting, and then it's still there. It's scarcely been actually addressed to the point that we can say the environment is being restored. However, we find out that artisanal crude oil refining is turning eco-sanctuaries into wastelands. The picture on the right tells you about this crude coal fire industry. You can see the background farms, and you can only guess what people can get. The process of artisanal refining typically involves primitive, low technology, illegal stills, distilleries that are heated in open fires by crude oil, and this is tipped into pits on the ground. So we have within the Eastern Niger Delta alone, we have used satellite imageries to find out that there are more than 217, as of 3 years ago, 217 local coal fire points aggregating around the whole place. As the oil burns away, some seeps into the ground, often located at the edge of the river to facilitate evacuation of products. And over 271 artisanal refineries have been identified in the eastern parts of River State, as I said earlier. And then this coal fire business has turned eco-sanctuaries into wastelands. I tell you that even if these practices were to stop today, without a positive and well-articulated intervention in these areas, these eco-sanctuaries have been turned into permanent wastelands for several generations to come. To compound this matter, mangroves are disappearing. GONLAC 2017 reports the historical loss of mangroves in communities east of the Bonny River alone as the largest, and I want to emphasize, the largest destruction of the mangrove ecosystem observed in any part of the world. The image or the photograph on the right tells you this photograph that was taken from the same part, just within a 15-year period. You can see the projections, where the arrows point to. Then you can see on the left-hand side of the arrow, on the top photo and the photo below, you can see the whole of these areas that are being depleted of mangroves. And of course, it revealed that over 4,000 hectares of mangrove colonies were completely destroyed by operational and illegal activities, and a further 105 hectares due to pipeline corridors. Mangrove ecosystems provide various ecological and economical ecosystem services, contributing to coastal erosion protection, water filtration, provision of areas for fish and shrimp breeding, provision of building materials and medicinal ingredients, and the attraction of tourists, and amongst other factors. With the disappearance of our mangroves, as has been recorded here, this is not fairy tale. It is the situation as we observe today. Then you can know the consequences that we have. Aquifer vulnerability and oil pollution toxicity. The geological reason comprises of recent unconsolidated sediments, which enhances the ease of contaminant migration in the subsurface. A study that was carried out by the speaker in about 2015 revealed that the average groundwater velocity in the region is about 1.403 times 10 to the power minus 3 meters per second. Aquifers are thus very vulnerable to contamination. Pollution hydrocarbon contaminants have been detected at depths greater than 5 minutes by UNEP. Studies have also shown that widespread presence of petroleum hydrocarbons contaminants in the biophysical environment of the state is capable of exerting crude and long-term.
5 minutes to go.
Yeah. So let me conclude my discourse this morning. It is observed that the bioaccumulation of heavy metals such as lead and cadmium in the surviving crops like cassava and pumpkin. Periwinkle, the Tympanotus foxcatus radula, a local delicacy in River State, found in Elechia Bodo Priest University, were observed to have accumulated, concentrated more of these heavy metals and sediments in the water column in their environments. So we talked about high radiological indices of rivers and all that. So radiation levels within oil spill sites is often up to 0.16 microRöntgen per hour. And this is higher than normal background of 0.011 microRöntgen per hour in river state communities. So we can see that we are exposed to radiological pollution that, of course, we also know that this is carcinogenic. So the persistence of spilled crude oil in river state could result not only to infertility, but hemotoxicity, hepatotoxicity, and carcinogenesis through the effects of chromatin DNA. These are genotoxic, and so there is no safe limit for these contaminants of concern. Finally, talking about flooding. Climate change issues have necessitated excessive rainfall, and this is causing serious problems within the region. And so I now say that the solutions that we can posit following all these problems, environmental degradation problems that we've highlighted, include the following. Air pollution. This can be minimized through the enforcement of gas flare legislation, increased domestic gas utilization. For artisanal refinery and illegal bunkering, we posit that the granting of licenses for modular refineries can replace the coal-fire industry. For radiological pollution, stringent monitoring of disposal of oil drilling waste of oil companies will resolve these issues. Oil spillages, replacements of old pipelines and community sensitization on dangers of incessant oil spills in the environment, rapid response and containment of oil spills when they happen can largely address this problem. Finally, it is obvious from the foregoing that the magnitude and extent of the environmental health challenges in River State and in parts of the Niger Delta are high and complex. Science alone cannot safeguard our environment. However, without science-based policies and actions, the environment, which is our collective heritage, is therefore doomed. Therefore, the key to resolving environmental health crises currently being faced in River State and Niger Delta as a whole lies within the academia, and with organizations such as the Institute of Directors. Scientists are very good at studying and understanding natural processes and the impacts of human activities and climate change on the environment while supporting critical data information. As a way forward, deliberate efforts should be made to improve communication, collaboration between scientists, researchers, and the environmental governance and policymakers and bodies like the Institute of Directors. My last word is, the environmental, economic, and social and security challenges plaguing the state and the region are intricately linked. Focusing separately on each environmental problem is equivalent to addressing part of the big problem. Therefore, an integrated, holistic, strategic, and participatory approach, planning and implementation that cuts across sectors and disciplines is therefore recommended. The approach will involve both short and long-term objectives aimed at addressing the major environmental challenges predicated on cooperation, partnership, and coordinated implementation of well-defined actions. The communities bear the brunt of environmental degradation wrought by oil and gas exploration and exploitation activities in River State and Niger Delta. Therefore, local people should be consulted as stakeholders in decisions and activities that border on their livelihood, environment, and heritage. This will engender a sense of resource ownership and respect to a people so richly endowed and yet made so poor by the circumstances in which they find themselves. I proceed by saying that a sustainable, cleaner, healthier environment in River State and the Niger Delta is possible. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Giadon, for your keynote address, which clearly is an excursion into the magnitude of the subject matter. What have we got? A degraded environment, politics of acrimony, suspicion, a highly irritable society, poverty, and hopelessness, apocalypse. Those are very strong words. And indeed, that is what it is. That was an insightful excursion into the subject matter. And luckily, we've assembled a team of subject matter experts who have played in this region over the years and who will be leading us in the panel discussion. But please, before we do that, all questions and answers should be channeled to the inbox. That's for questions and answers so that we can have a seamless flow of those answers when the time comes. We're going to be calling on our first panelist, Honorable Chris Onuba. Honorable Chris Onuba is the Commissioner for Environment in Delta. Delta State is one of the Niger Delta states. The Honorable Commissioner has had a decent career in politics and governance, where he rose through the ranks, having served first as Secretary to Local Government from 2001 to 2002. He also worked in the Delta State Library Board. And then, as the current Commissioner for Environment, he will share the public sector perspective on government legislation on issues affecting the environment and possible interventions that the government has put in place to ensure preservation of the environment, and a lot more that needs to be done. Honorable Chris Onuba, you have the floor, please.
All right, thank you very much. I'm sure everyone can hear me. First, let me appreciate the management of the IoD Nigeria for this opportunity to share my thoughts as it affects the environment. Let me also say thank you to our guest speaker, the major discussant from, as far as I'm concerned. That lecture was quite insightful, very, very insightful and quite educative. Thank you very much for your thoughts. The issue of the environment is something I share a very strong passion and sentiment on. And that is because based on my experience as Commissioner for Environment for 2 years running, and my interaction with other environmental experts. The issue of the environment is something everyone should take very seriously. And that is because first, on assumption of office as Commissioner for Environment, I discovered that over the years, government made several efforts towards doing some remediation on the environment. Government over the years have committed huge resources into having a cleaner environment for the people. But you discover that very little or nothing have been achieved over the years. And I tried to find out why very minimal results in the midst of the huge resources that is committed into the environment. I discovered first, it has to do with the people. And that is because that consciousness of having a cleaner environment is not there with us yet. Unless, as I keep saying, unless we take ownership of the environment. For me, I believe very strongly that when we take ownership of the environment, we become the first police on the environment. And unless we do that, that deliberate consciousness of having a cleaner environment, unless we have that driven into the people of the Niger Delta, we will continue to have the challenges of a very bad environment. Now, having said so, let me also say some things on the environment before I talk a little about the government policies and the effort of government as it affects the environment. Now, you discover that the environment, the level of degradation, the last speaker has touched a lot about that. Now, if you have an idea of the way the Niger Delta environment was before the advent of the oil and the activities of the oil industry and what it is now, you will discover that so much damage has been done to the environment. Now, let me start with the issue of the oil activities in the Niger Delta. For instance, the activities of the oil industry has caused so much damage to the environment. A couple of weeks ago, I had an overflight of the environment. I took an overflight with some oil operators. For instance, I did that flight with Chevron and other staffs of other oil companies. If you do an overflight of the entire Niger Delta, that way you can appreciate the level of damage that is done to the environment of Niger Delta. Whether it is as a result of equipment failure and we continue to have this oil spill into the environment, because the nature of the environment, once there's an oil spill, what happens is that the entire aquatic life is in danger. The aquatic life is in danger. The entire ecosystem is destroyed. The people who live along the coastal line, their own health is also endangered by that. Now, that's on one side. Whether it is also as a result of third-party interference. Now, we have that more often in the Niger Delta. We can't shy away from that. It's something that is a constant occurrence in the Niger Delta. Third-party interference as a result of oil equipment failure, or you want to also mention the issue of gas flaring here and there. All of this contribute heavily to the pollution of the environment and the degradation of the environment. Now, I said this to you. In the last climate change conference that I attended in Spain, that's about 2 years ago, it was reported that at the moment there's 2% reduction in the amount of oxygen on planet Earth. And if that statistics is something to go by, I repeat that there's 2% reduction in the amount of oxygen on planet Earth, you can be sure the level of reduction around the Niger Delta. That's as a result of the gas flaring that is constantly going on, activities of third-party persons, equipment failure. All of this contributes so much to the damage that is done to the environment. Now, it will also interest us to know too that at independence, the Nigeria Forest Reserve was about 40%, if my statistics is right. But as I speak to you today, it's 7%. And we do know too that the amount of oxygen that is on planet Earth, the trees around us contribute 75% to the amount of oxygen on planet Earth. Now, if we have this level of degradation, this level of deforestation, all of our trees have all gone down, all of our trees, our forest reserve have been destroyed. The mangrove forest is being eroded almost on a daily basis. So you can imagine the level of damage that is done to not just to the environment, the health of the people. Now, let me also mention the activities of illegal miners. Illegal miners, they also do a lot of damage to the environment. People just go about doing damage, and each time you try to, as a ministry, each time you try to want to stop them, they tell you, oh, it is the exclusive right of the Federal Ministry of Mines and Steel. So it becomes difficult for the state to actually do, to monitor the environment as it affects illegal mining activities in the environment, not to also mention human activity. You know, all these contribute heavily to the degradation of the environment. As we speak today, the aquatic environment is being destroyed. The entire ecosystem is being destroyed. Now, the health system of the people is also being destroyed. Summarily, all these are as a result of oil activities, farming activity, people going about to fend for themselves, trying to get a livelihood for themselves. They end up destroying the environment. Now,
the Honorable Commissioner,
yes.
If I can engage you just a little bit, we've been able to scope the magnitude of the problem from the previous keynote speaker.
Yeah.
What I would like you to do for us is to put in perspective the global legislation which Nigeria might be a signatory to, and even our local legislations. Are they effective? For instance, we have the federal environmental protection.
I understand that very well. For instance, the local legislation that is put in place towards finding a total remediation to the environment. For instance, we have a sanitation law, we have the forestry law, and again, we also have the Nostra Act of 2007. Now, the issue, the challenge we have, for instance, the Nostra Act of 2007 is more or less an exclusive right of the federal government. Now, Nostra, the idea is that it is for Nostra to work with the state government. The idea is for Nostra to work with state government to find solution to the degradation of the environment. All of the pollutants, for instance, there's an oil spill. Now, Nostra was set up to also help in managing oil spill in Nigeria. And they should do that in conjunction with the state government. But we find out that over time, Nostra will only invite the state government for a JIV. In the case of oil spill, we go for a JIV. After that, you no longer hear from Nostra. They no longer carry the state along. I've had cause to discuss that with the Federal Ministry of Environment. And also in that occasion said that there's a need for us to have a stronger synergy. We have this law, and that is because most of the pollutants, most of the things that destroy the environment is oil related. And if it is oil related, and we know that oil is the exclusive right of the federal government. So it is a federal law that sometimes we operate, and it's very challenging. Now, for the state, we have, for instance, in Delta, we have the SEPA that was set up. That law was put together to manage effluent discharge into the environment. But you discover that there's little or minimal result we can get using the local law. So I am thinking that what should happen is that the Nostra Act of 2007 should be redefined so that the state will be given a more bite, a stronger role to play in that arrangement. Except we do that, we'll continue to have this challenge that we have. But as it affects the state, we have our law, we have the forestry law, we have a sanitation law, we have all of the local legislation that is put in place towards having a cleaner environment. But you understand, as I said, the thing that destroys the environment more is something that falls into the exclusive right of the federal government. For instance, mining. If you go around some of the states in Nigeria, for instance, Delta State, the activities of illegal miners everywhere has done a lot of damages to the environment. And they tell you that it is the right of the Federal Ministry of Mines and Steel. So this is a challenge we have. But at the moment, we are trying to also put up a legislation as a state that will give us more bite on the environment. And this law will be drawn from the fact that the land belongs to government. If the land truly belongs to government, so if we have anybody whose activity also help to destroy that environment, we should also have the right to also monitor and manage the environment. So this is what I can say as it affects the law. Another thing that we also,
thank you very much, the Honorable Commissioner.
yeah.
I'm sure we'll come back to this when we have a question and answer session, because you've raised a lot of issues, which I believe. Yeah, so just warm up for the question and answer session, because I'm sure a lot of people are going to take up some of the issues you've raised.
All right, thank you so much.
At this point, I'd like to invite the second discussant, Mr. Jesse Martin Manufo. Jesse is the head of environment in the Stakeholders Democracy Network. Jesse, you're currently a senior project officer at this agency. You're focused on improving environmental legislation, especially those that govern oil and gas sector in Nigeria. And you've actually been involved with. Can you hear me at all?
Yes, I can hear you.
Hello? Okay, thank you very much. You have been involved in a lot of intervention from the non-governmental point of view, and you particularly were involved in the Ogoni cleanup, which is quite a controversial one. And you've been involved with the interaction with the IOCs as well as other stakeholders. Can you give us a sense of your perspective as it affects the subject matter today?
Okay, very much for this opportunity to speak at this forum being organized by the Institute of Directors, the South-South Zone. I want to, I want to rely on existing protocols. I also want to thank Dr. Giadom for the keynote presentation. From the civil society perspective on the issue of environment, I'll first of all say that our environment is heavily and hugely degraded. There's no way of mincing words. It's something that is appalling, and it shows that the failure of the government and regulators to be able to manage our environment. We have to note that the environment, the Constitution of the Federal Republic as amended in Section 2 of the Constitution, Section 20 of the Constitution, it is the duty of both the state and the federal government to ensure that the environment is protected and safeguarded, both water, air, land, and wildlife of Nigeria. But however, they've not been able to do this effectively, despite the enactment of several laws. There are loads of establishment laws such as NESRIA, NOSDRA, NNPC Act. You have Oil Pipelines Act, you have Oil and Navigable Waters Act, you have Petroleum Act, Associated Gas Reinjection Act. There are a myriad of laws that have been enacted to be able to effectively govern and manage the Nigerian environment. But however, despite the several laws that have been put in place, governments and its agencies, the regulators, have not been able to effectively regulate and enforce these laws. And as a civil society actor, we've been able to interface with government, regulators, with oil companies, and communities severally on these issues. And we've discovered that there are loads of problems, both those that are domiciled within governments, those domiciled within individuals who are supposed to effectively do this that are unable to do it. So for us, is the ministries and agencies who are responsible for this have used basically three approaches in terms of enforcing our laws. So we have the prevention of environmental damages, regulation using several regulation. Is it air gas spin? Is it flare out regulation and other regulations, and also punishment? But however, over the time, we've seen that they've not been able to do this, and some of the reasons why they've not been able to do this are some agencies are ill-equipped to enforce their laws. The Honorable Commissioner did mention about NOSDRA and the inability of NOSDRA to carry the State Ministry of Environment along. It is not the fault within the staff at NOSDRA. It's a fault of lack of capacity, especially funding capacity. So a situation whereby NOSDRA cannot call for a JIV except if the oil company calls for JIV and invites NOSDRA, then NOSDRA invites the Ministry of Environment. So that's the way NOSDRA has, over the years, gone about the issue of JIV. It's not an effective system. So a regulator should be able to investigate, should be able to call out the polluter, to be able to enforce those laws. But if the regulator sits back and waits for the polluter to write him and say, okay, there's a pollution in a certain place for them to act, then it makes their ability to effectively do their job irrelevant. We also have cases where our laws are archaic. For instance, the Oil Pipelines Act, if I'm sure, the Oil Pipelines Act was 1956. Also, Petroleum Act is 1957. The oil industry has moved way back, way faster beyond some of these laws. So it creates loopholes. There are lots of loopholes within these laws. These are laws that makes it possible for oil companies and industry operators to exploit these laws. These are laws to their benefit and to the detriment of the environment. We also have cases of indiscipline within the system, whereby is it on these parts of community people? There are places you say no dumping of refuse, but people will dump refuse there. Is it cases of indiscipline in terms of falling of trees, or even in pollution itself? So indiscipline within as a community of people, within the Nigerian persons themselves, we are very indisciplined. We don't understand the concept of environment, and we try to do things and carry out activities as we wish. So we also have corruption. Dr. Giadam talked about the case of artisanal refining and the impact on environment. We also have corruption within security operatives, the JTF, who are supposed to protect and enforce that they don't carry out these activities, whereby the JTF collects money from these guys to enable them to move their products along our waterways. Is it corruption in our courts, where cases of environmental issues are brought to court and it drags for several years without communities getting justice? And also have leniency within our laws. For instance, on gas flaring, you have the minister will give exemption to oil companies to flare gas, but that's not what it should be. Gas flaring has been illegal in Nigeria since the 1980s, but there's leniency within our laws. Even in the current petroleum industry bill that is being discussed, that's currently being discussed in the National Assembly, there's still that provision where the minister can give exemption to oil companies to flare gas. Then talk of lack of commitment and political will to implement environmental legislations. Sometimes, fairly recently, a commissioner was sacked or relieved of his job because he was there to enforce what was within his purview as a commissioner. So if a situation whereby that commissioners cannot act based on what they're supposed to do, then what's the need for them to act? There's no incentive for them to act. Everyone will just sit down and let things happen because people want to save their heads. Civil servants want to retain their jobs. They don't want to act because there's no lack of political will from the political leaders who are supposed to give them the backing to enforce these laws. So these are some of the challenges that we've seen that's made it impossible for the for government and regulators to actually enforce our numerous laws that have been established.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Jesse Martin. You've thrown up a lot of issues, which I believe we're going to take up in the second segment of the conversation when we're going to have our questions and answers. And hopefully you can answer some of those questions. But quickly before you go, the issue of carbon credit is something that has been touted all over the world. As an independent observer, how do you think that's going to work for society?
Okay. Recently, I was privy to have been in a meeting with at the Federal Ministry of Environment, where the issue of carbon credits and decarbonization of the Nigerian economy was discussed. It is something that that has worked in other countries, and looking at Nigerians' commitment towards climate change is also an option that the government is looking towards adopting. But however, we need to set up the right both the financial and the laws to guide in it, so that companies who want to engage in engage in acts that will give them carbon credits are effectively tied up together. So there has to be incentives. The incentives has to be backed up by law so that companies can, actually participate and benefit from carbon credits. Without those enabling laws, it amounts to nothing. So government, while proposing that we should go towards carbon credits, they should also look at setting up the enabling laws that will give companies and individuals the confidence to participate in carbon credits.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I would like to invite the third discussant, Chief Professor Jasper F. Jumbo. Chief Professor Jasper Jumbo is the chairman and CEO of Niger Delta Projects Consortium. He has been in the thick and thin of this conversation. And today we shall be sharing his 28 years experience in community leadership, as well as what he has done under the aegis of the Nigerian Association of Mineral Producing Area Development, that's NAMPAD. Professor Jumbo will share his vast experience with conflict resolution, with the IOCs and government, what has been done in the past, and how we can take the conversation forward. Chief Professor Jasper Jumbo, you have the floor, please.
The president of the council. Yes, I'm with you.
Thank you,
can you hear me? So let me quickly commend the president of our council.
Please go ahead.
And commend all of you for this wonderful, forum. I call it an expository, forum that will help to enlighten our people and perhaps help in reconscientizing our stakeholders into buying into the idea of helping to maintain our environment. I started life in the petroleum industry from the 70s. I've been in community advocacy for 40-something years, and I was in charge of petroleum and environment for the Rivers State government during the mobile oil spill incident and the Sarawa saga. I worked to set up, I wrote the blueprint of UNPADEC and NDDC, and I have a little bit of experience. And I'm going to be blunt. Many people may not like what I will say, but at my age, if I don't speak out, what will happen to our environment? I feel irked by what is going on. The problem is that when the whites were running the industry, before we started agitating for NNLC, that metamorphosis practice all over. I worked in the Petroleum Research Laboratory, which Schlumberger bought up. And when our Nigerians came on board, we started to play double standards, either trying to buy favor from the whites or trying to sell our birthright. We wouldn't even allow the process technology to be understood by people who are supposed to be operating in some of the platforms. There was no due diligence as to measure the scientific integrity of most of the pipes, or to even identify equipment of obsolescence with a view to checkmating the negative impacts on our environment. I've listened, and I want to quickly comment both Martins and my brother, Dr. Giadom, but they are very wonderful analysis. So I don't want to repeat some of the things they said. But let me say this, that the problem is mostly from we, the Nigerians, including Jasper Jumbo and all of you listening. The problem is from our governors. It's from our members of our House of Representatives. The lack of political will to know that we have no other environmental samples. When I was in charge of petroleum environment for Rivers State governments, during the mobile oil spill incident of January 12, 1998, I was on the circle, virtually controlling all the people in charge of the environment in the sub-region. They tried to compromise us to pay 30,000 to the negatively impacted fisher folks, forgetting that our traditional occupational skills happen to be, subsistent, farming and fishing. And of course, I said no. I remember they brought a check first of 100 and something million, invited me to mobile headquarters. I walked out on them. They went and reported to the military governor. He called me. I told him, sorry, that with the deluge I saw, there was no need, there was no way I was going to accept that money. That even God would kill me. He started laughing. We developed another concept, the water rights of 1.something billion. He wanted us to share the money alone. I refused. He said, then what was I doing in government? I said, I came to institute sanity. And within the year, we introduced a few things. We went to the United Nations with the President Chief of Staff when he was permanent representative, at the United Nations, and spoke at the United Nations to remove Nigeria from a pariah status during the Sorowa saga. I insisted and caused the federal government to scrap paper because, for Christ's sake, environment is on the concurrent legislative list. I forced them and we set up the various ministries of environment nationwide. I caused them to, raise the amount of money paid for compensation. And we started thinking of, amending the laws. We even in River State introduced an arbitration court for pollution matters. Yes, many of my people from my primary constituency, the oil industry, couldn't have liked it. But we don't have any other place to go to. We're indigenous. And we have to protect our people. And above all, most of our people were not being integrated into what was going on in the industries around us. Our brothers from the north, our brothers from Yoruba land would bring in their brothers, and the people, the primary stakeholders, had no inclusiveness. There was no stakeholder buy-in. Most of the scoping of environmental listing did not even take into cognizance the interests of the communities involved. Like what is going on in my hometown in Bonny? It's a charade. What Shell and the NLNG that on our family land, what they're doing? How can they be dealing with just one man to take what belongs to the real landlords and the local content, except that Wabote is trying to do a very good job, and I like to comment him, public on the local content issue. But right now, what is the local content, inclusiveness for the communities that really own the land where the NLNG is sited in Bonny or the Shell terminal? They take money, they pay, and they call divide and rule. And many of the youths are not employed. The next thing, they go into social, mobs. They go into negative bunkering. They go into kidnapping. They go into the pollution of the environment. The government is not even bringing out money to find alternative, employability for, these youths, for the women. Get them to trade. Leave that. When we started with the amnesty program, for example, I was one of those who developed the amnesty blueprint. We looked at it and made inputs. Some of us even traveled outside this country, Brazil, we went to Ghana, to find ways for the management, of this amnesty. Even went to Israel. We articulated documents and gave to them how to, develop different types of agricultural schemes, even fish farms on the water that will be protected, to have alternative employment for our people. What happened? These things were jettisoned. No political will on the part of the governing class. Okay? So the boys resorted to helping themselves. And to worsen the matter, you get even those who are supposed to checkmate these things, the security agencies that help me, they join. Even those that are in government, they join in making this money, forgetting that our environment ought to be protected. These are some of the problems. Yes, we have laws. My brother, the commissioner from Delta State had mentioned several laws. You have the DPR, laws, okay? The environmental matters, the oversight on oil and gas industry, okay? They have the environmental guidelines and standards for the petroleum industry. You have the National Inland Waterways that we set up after the 1995 establishment of the oil terminal use matters. You have the NIMASA, they mentioned NOSRA, which is a failure so far as we are concerned. They mentioned in the high trade, which had not impacted much on our people. Many of these agencies, including the Federal Ministry of Environment, have scheduled complementarity. The ecological fund we set up, they've not used it in this part of the world much. Nobody has pushed for it, even our people in the National Assembly. So what we're looking at is a situation where there is chaos in the sector, in the environmental sector. And we all need to be aware. We all need to, rethink our strategies. That is why I want to once again commend the IoD for bringing to the fore the need to address environmental issues, because that is the only way we can begin to look at the various causes of underdevelopment and environmental degradation in the region. Dr. Gardon went, to a very great extent to talk about the carcinogenic and other health-related, issues. But the whole process of pollution is being addressed in very unsustainable manner, because largely we are doing it without looking at what had impacted on our community. Take, for example, Train 7 is supposed to pick up in Bonny. After Trains 1 to 6, naturally, we should do a post-impact review of that process technology that is being used. And from what you find out, either from the noxious emissions and other deleterious effects on the community, they talked about acid rain, they talked about cancer, this, that. We're supposed to now look at whether the process technology they used from Trains 1 to 6 should be applicable for Train 7, or whether there is need to conduct a research. NLG is supposed to have done this with their investors, with the Nigerian government. It's not just going to collect money at the expense of Niger Delta. I think enough is enough. Okay? Some of us, when
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Professor Jumbo. Can we drill it down to clearly the conflicts are there and they're building up on a daily basis. We'd like to draw on your vast experience. How can we resolve this conflict that is about to consume us? Can you just spend, you have just 3 minutes, please. Just spend the last 3 minutes talking about that.
Thank you so much. One, somebody mentioned gas flare. I'm aware that there is a provision for gas flare penalty tax in Nigeria. As a matter of fact, I have the privileged information that His Excellency, former Governor of Rivers State, King J.T. Smith, and a few others met with former President Jonathan, met with, His Excellency, the President Buhari, and even the Vice President, and they approved the release of 98.6 billion of this gas flare penalty, tax that will be used to address the specific effects or negative effects on the gas impacted communities. Why is government still wasting time to release this money? I've even helped in articulating a document, I call it, the operational framework for gas flare penalty fund implementation committee, which have been submitted to government. Why are they wasting time to release it, to set up that agency, to start working with other scheduled agencies that have complementary roles in how to start addressing maybe the black soot and other issues, particularly in Rivers State. One. Two, the PIB bill People have looked at it. They are asking for some funds for the communities. Why can't the industry throw their weight behind what communities are asking for, but insist that one king, one Jasper Jumbo, or one other person does not go to carry this money and use it to try to go and become a governor tomorrow or a senator like they're doing in NDDC and all that, and insist that this money be used to address some of these issues with inputs from the industry. Why can't we copy the technologies, for example, from like Israel, their farming techniques? When I was in charge of United Rice Council for Nigeria, they took me to some of their, farming grounds of Texas. They went to Clearfield, the Adrian laboratories, and we found out how they use metallocect and chelates and, inseminate into their soil when they want to grow rice and other things, so that they produce 7 times the comparatively what is produced for the same portion of land with the same seedlings in Nigeria. There are so many technologies, even in Brazil. We have to, do technology poaching. We have to get a crop of people. Even if IoD can do that, set up, people, a branch of it with contributions from the industry, with the government, for people who will have Nigeria at heart, who will have our environment at heart, and be able to introduce measures that will help to reverse the situations. There are other issues. How do we find alternative skills, more so with the advent of COVID-19 and its effect worldwide? Now that we're talking of digital technology, how do we train our boys? How do we help them to start to produce locally so that they will have alternative employment and stop the negative bunkering? Finally, a friend of mine, His Majesty King Frank Okurapo, who is the chairman of the Association of Niger Delta Monarchs in Nigeria, was nearly weeping about a month and a half ago when I stayed with him in GRA quarters. And he was telling me, can you imagine that a few of them as kings from Niger Delta got together and applied to the president that they should be given a marginal field so that they will use to take care of themselves and their communities. And it was minister to our brother, the minister, of petroleum. Well, instead of addressing it from that as our son, he sent it to one officer in DPR. And the DPR officer wrote to them, telling them that they should go and form one company like, that's, and come and kill. I felt that this was madness. A country where over 90%.
Thank you very much, Prof. Thank you very much, Prof. Thank you very much. With your wealth of experience, you have so much to ventilate about, and we can understand that. But of course, the time is very, very short. This is only the beginning of this conversation. I'm sure the Institute of Directors will create more platforms for more interactive sessions like we're having today. And thank you for the opportunity. Thank you very much. We'll now allow our audience to ask one question each to the discussant, and then we're going to give the discussant 3 minutes to wrap up their views, and then we can wrap up. I have a question from in the box now addressed to Dr. Giadom. Dr. Giadom, are you with us? Dr. Giadom? Dr. Giadom, can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear. I'm with you. Can you hear me?
Fantastic. Okay, this question is for Dr. Giadom from Dayo Adewi. Dayo says, what can the universities and the local government do to provide credible and verifiable data on environmental degradation in our localities? What could it take for IoD to organize the private sector to spearhead effective gathering of data to prevent the usual disagreement in verification of claims on environmental damages and incidents? The first part will be for you, Dr. Giadom. I think the one for the IoD, somebody from IoD will take that.
Yes,
Dr. Giadom, you have the floor, please.
Yes, thank you very much for the question, especially the one that involves the academia. I must say that the Nigerian academia is is overworking, but the resources that we put into the public domain are not being properly utilized. Every day and every year, there are tons and tons of research data that is being published. So I will tell the person that asked the question that yes, the data that he's requesting for is already in the public domain, and for whatever information that is required, especially things concerning the environment within the Nigerian space, all you need to do is just to Google the theme of your request, and you will see tons and tons of work that has been carried out by Nigerian academics. That is number one. And number two, we also need an institute like the Institute of Directors to help. There are concepts that happen in different parts of the world, research and development. After the academia carries out effective research, it is also the duty of other agencies, such as the Institute of Directors and government, to carry out the further development, propagation, and popularization of the ideas that have been posited by the academics. That is my contribution thus far. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Giadam. The question for the IoD, would the president like to take that place? President IoD, would you like to take
Mr. Moderator?
question?
Sorry, I think the DG is well forced to do that.
Okay, the DG then, sorry.
Thank you very much, sir. First, let me apologize that my video is not on. I am having a little issue with my device, but I hope you make do with my voice. And I'm quite happy about that question. And I think what I will say is first, what we are doing is engagement. And this is the beginning of the engagement that we're doing, especially on the issue of environment, especially in the areas where it is at eating. Going forward from this, the communique of this webinar is something we're going to use to engage with other organizations like IoD Nigeria, in the private sector, to take what I would call a private sector initiative on this issue of the environment, especially as it's affecting almost every part of the country. So the Institute sees this as our first step, and we're going to move forward from here to see how we can take the leadership in engaging other private sector organizations to be the private sector initiative on the issue of environment. Thank you very much.
Very much, Mr. Lini, DG IoD. We have the second question here, which is directed to Mr. Jesse Martins Manufo, and it's from Eugene Itwa. The question is, what can make carbon market viable in Nigeria?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Okay. Yes, this was question I think I tried to answer from the tail end of my submission. Yes, one of the key things, the first things, just as I mentioned, is to create an enabling law for carbon credits on the carbon market. So if we create something like a clearinghouse, once we create a law, an enabling law that can ensure that companies and individuals who are willing can participate in the carbon credit market. Another thing that can be done is to create kind of a clearinghouse. We call it like a stock exchange, whereby a coordinating ministry or agency that will coordinate inputs and data from several companies who are participating in carbon credits. So if you create that kind of system whereby a ministry, for instance, maybe Ministry of Environment or the Department of Climate Change or Forestry, whatever ministry that we decide to domicile carbon credits at, they create an inventory of who are all the companies who are doing this, what are they doing, what are their contributions, and creating that sense whereby they now know, okay, company XYZ have done so and so, and this is what they can, carbon credits they've contributed to the system. And it becomes like a clearinghouse whereby everybody knows what they've put in and what they're getting out of it, kind of ensuring that there's transparency and accountability in the system. So once we have an enabling law established, then we create a clearinghouse, coordinating ministry or agency, as the case may be, that will ensure that there's transparency in the whole system. Then based on that, the Nigerian government now can reach out to international organizations, donor agencies to show an example of what the Nigerian government is doing. Then funds can come in from these donor agencies to sustain and ensure that our carbon credit system is viable, effective, and works. In that way, everybody will have confidence to engage in the market. Until that is done, everything that we do, it must just be like us, having a discussion and just talk on paper. But these are kind of things I think that should be done to ensure that to create that enabling environment whereby every participant will have confidence in the system and know what is due them and what they can benefit from the system. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We have a question here from Mr. Yusuf. Mr. Yusuf wants to know, this is directed to the Commissioner for Environment, Delta State. Mr. Yusuf would like to know that given the fact that everybody knows that some of the IOCs are making their exit from the Niger Delta, what could be done to ensure that they live up to their responsibilities, even in the interim? And the question is directed to the Honorable Commissioner for Environment.
Can I hear that again, please?
Honorable Commissioner, are you with us?
Yeah, I didn't hear that. Please, let me hear it again, please.
Mr. Yusuf Ibrahim. Okay, Mr. Yusuf Ibrahim would like to know what the government is doing to ensure that the IOCs live up to their responsibilities, particularly with the fact that most of them, knowing that operations are not profitable anymore, are going to be making an exit from the region. What can the government do to make sure they live up to their expectations as it affects the environment?
One of the reasons why a number of these houses have actually left, you also discovered that over time, they started by moving their operational headquarters from the Niger Delta back to Lagos. And eventually they started moving their operation. And in most cases, they sell the franchise right to Nigeria investors. Now, what I think government can do first, the first thing is to minimize the occurrence of third-party interference in this oil industry. If we do everything possible to reduce the amount of third-party interference, because anytime that happens, it reduces the quantity of production, so it affects the overall earning as a company. So government is doing everything to do proper compliance monitoring, number one. Government is doing everything possible to minimize the occurrence of third-party interference in the oil industry. Number three, government is also trying to create a very conducive environment for this IOC to operate. Once government is able to do that, I'm sure this company will want to reconsider their decision. What is important is nobody wants to do a business in a place where first, the environment is not conducive. Number two, people go into business to make money. And if that is not happening, it becomes difficult for any company to want to operate in the Niger Delta. Aside from that, another thing that is very important is the issue of peace. Government is doing everything possible to ensure that there is peace in the Niger Delta. Once that happens, I'm sure some of these IOC will reconsider their decisions. I hope I'm
Thank you very much.
All right, thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. Yes, thank you very much, Honorable Commissioner. Now, the last question goes to Chief Professor Jumbo. The question is, would you rather we take up a class action suit against the IOCs and other third-party interference to curb the issue of environmental degradation? The question is from Ibrahim Yusuf. and it's directed to Professor Jasper Jumbo. Professor Jumbo, are you with us? Professor Jumbo,
Hello?
are you with us? Can you hear
I'm with
me?
you. I'm with you. Can you hear me?
Professor Jumbo, can you hear? Okay.
I said,
Yes.
in our
Did you get a
higher
question?
national interest, I heard the question, whether it will be necessary if need be to take legal action against it. Is that not so? Hello?
Correct.
Uh-oh.
Correct.
No,
Correct.
no, no. I said, if necessary, we should do that in our national in a higher national interest. But we should first, because they're members of the society, they're corporate citizens, and they influence the buoyancy of our economy. We can't, just be fighting with them. We should try dialogue, with them. Create enabling environments for, dialogue. Get, the civil society groups, get institutes like the IoD, get some other reputable people and some people in the communities that can look, even people in government, eyeball to eyeball, and call them to order where they're not doing the correct thing. And we dialogue and agree on how to protect the environment. The problem we're having, and I want people to notice, part of this environmental degradation, is that some of the major polluters, their families are not around River State. They're not around Delta State. If they had been there, they won't do some of the things. So we need to invite the IOCs and sit down and have a holistic and realistic, dispassionate dialogue over some of these issues. And together, forge a framework for sustainable development and, mutual, coexistence in our national interest. This way, again, I like to sound a note of advice to our youths. Well, in our quest to get what should be our right, at times, they overreach their locus. Like my brother from Delta said, the commissioner, no meaningful investor will want to come and invest his money in an environment where he wouldn't have peace, where he will invest his money and there'll be daily extortion and disturbance. They come to invest to make profit, for Christ's sake. That is why there has to be a middle of the road understanding between the IOCs, other industrialists, our kings, our governors, our legislators, and our youth, the community people. It's an all-party event because the issue of the environment is becoming a challenge. Before it gets to an irreversible nightmare, there is need for all of us to dialogue.
Thank you very much, Professor Jumbo.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I would like to invite all the presenters to make their last 2 minutes wrap up. I'll start by inviting Dr. Ferdinand to wrap up in 2 minutes. Thereafter, the Honorable Commissioner, Honorable Nova, will speak for 2 minutes, wrap up for 2 minutes, and then Professor Jumbo, another wrap up for 2 minutes.
Okay.
That order, please. Dr. Gerdon, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you very much. It has been a worthwhile event, and I am very impressed by the effort of the Institute of Directors putting all these together. All I will say is that much has been said about environmental degradation in Niger Delta and how it affects all the citizens and communities of the region. I will say that we should always bear in mind that the environment is our patrimony, something that we borrowed from our children and will have to hand over this same borrowed resource, so to speak, back to them in a healthy manner. Having said this, I thank all the participants and everyone. And I also particularly will task the Institute of Directors to amplify the voices that are spoken on environmental degradation and the ways forward this morning. Amplify these voices, be the voice of the voiceless communities, and propagate this message far and wide. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Giadom, for that wrap-up. Honorable Commissioner Christian Onova, it's your turn.
Yeah, I can hear you very well. First, let me make this point. Yeah, the local sanitation law provides that.
2 minutes wrap up, please.
Can you hear me?
2 minutes wrap up, please.
Yes, that's what I'm trying to say. We have the local
2 minutes wrap up, please.
We have a local legislation that provides that polluter also pays. That when you pollute, you also pay for remediation. So I actually look forward to a situation where we have a strong policy that will compare people who pollute the environment, also contribute immensely towards remediation of the environment. That's what I would like to say. Secondly, I also like to look forward to a stronger policy that will compare everybody to start planting trees. For instance, we are about 200 million Nigeria. Of the 200 million Nigeria, if 100 million, each of the 100 million can plant at least 5 trees in a lifetime, we don't have an idea of how much we contribute back to nature. So I will encourage everybody to start planting trees. That can only be done if we have a strong legislation in place. All of us should at least plant 5 trees in a lifetime. If 60% of the total Nigerian population start planting trees in a lifetime, at least 5 trees, at the end of the day, would have contributed back into afforestation. I also look forward to strong enforcement and compliance monitoring on the side of government. It is true that we have all of these, some of these laws, whether international, whether national, local laws. We have these laws in place, but what is important is enforcement and strict compliance monitoring. If we do that, I'm sure in no distant time, we'll be able to do a lot of remediation and salvage the environment for everybody, especially the Niger Delta. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Honorable Onogba.
Thank you so much.
I'd like to invite Mr. Jesse Martins Manufo to wrap up for us.
Thank you once again. I want to thank IoD for this wonderful opportunity to share my experience in the environmental sphere. And I want to say that the will to protect the environment lies with us all, whether governments, local community, chiefs, business owner, wherever you are as an individual, it is your duty to protect the environment within your immediate sphere. So I want the knowledge and experience that we've shared today at this forum, and to all participants, to take the knowledge home, take the information home, and try to talk to all those you have who are within your sphere of influence, to convince them that yes, the environment is our home and it's the only thing that we can bequeath to our kids, and that everyone within their immediate environment should take adequate care of the environment. Be it planting trees, like the Honorable Commissioner has said, be it reporting incidents within your area, your community. Is it oil spill incidents? Is it cases of businesses who are not doing the right thing? Try to report those incidents to the appropriate authorities, and jointly, all of us will put our hands together to find an amicable solution to the climate, to the environmental menace that we've caused by ourselves. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chief Professor Jasper Jumbo. Can you wrap up this in 2 minutes? Professor Jumbo, are you with us?
Can you hear me?
Professor Jumbo, are you with us? Please go
Can you
ahead.
hear me?
Wrap up in 2 minutes.
Yes,
Yes,
said,
please, go ahead and wrap up. Yes, please. Can you go ahead and wrap up in 2 minutes?
Okay.
in commending the IoD for this wonderful initiative, I'd like to invite the IoD to include in their communique that the federal government should immediately release the gas flare penalty fund through the establishment of an implementation agency. 2, that the IOCs should create room for stakeholder buy-in in the things they are doing, especially participation in the local content, jobs that they are doing in the communities to take the youths off the negative social mores that many of them are engaged in. 3, I'd like to call on the Rivers State government to make adequate financial provision to tackle the black suit menace, and that the IOCs should also look into it, that even the security agencies should be talked to stop encouraging the proliferation of this negative bunkering in our backyards that have decimated the environment. Finally, I'd like to call on Niger Delta youths and stakeholders to create a peaceful, enabling environment for the companies operating in the region so that they can bring in their technologies, help us improve on our present skills level, help us to buoy up our economic competence with other members from other parts of the country and outside this country. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Professor Jumbo. We're now coming to the end of our conversation today. When the president of IoD spoke at the beginning of this conversation, he came up with a guideline of what we hope to achieve from this engagement. I believe we've created an opportunity for information sharing. I believe we've raised awareness on the subject matter. I believe we've learned some lessons and reviewed some of the mistakes that were made in the past as presented by the various speakers. I also believe that this will facilitate a fresh agenda between government, the IOCs, and all stakeholders. I believe coming from this, we might be able to develop some policies that will come out in betterment of the Niger Delta. And hopefully that will introduce further conversation with the major stakeholders on a very grave situation. We've looked at legislation and we believe it's inadequate. We've looked at the actions of the IOC and we believe they are not well policed, so to speak. We believe that the IOCs, as part of their social corporate responsibilities, might have a lot that they need to do. We take responsibility for not having the IOCs on this discussion because some of them were actually invited, but it wasn't honored. Maybe we would have taken more steps to get somebody from the IOCs to hear their own side of the story. But in future, I believe that they're going to be here to speak with us. Let me take the liberty of thanking the leadership of IoD, led by our own President of Council and the first and second Vice Presidents, and also the Director General. Let me thank Dr. Ferdinand Yadom in a special way for giving the keynote address. Let me thank Mr. Jesse Martins-Manufo for his contribution to the conversation, and of course our own Chief Professor Jasper Jumbo for all the things you've done in the process of making sure this is a reality. Let me also thank him, who is at the background with the ICT team trying to make sure this happened, and the leadership of Port Harcourt branch of IoD. And for me, I would like to say Thank you very much. Once I invited Dr. General of IoD to give the closing remarks. Dr. General IoD, please.
Thank you very much, our amiable moderator. First, I want to also say a very big thank you to you. You've thanked everybody, but you've not thanked yourself. I think we had a very wonderful session because you have expertly moderated the event, and we've been able to take all the questions, and I'm really very happy about that. Thank you very much, Mr. Innocent Iyalahari, Fellow of the Institute. We really appreciate. In my closing remark, and of course, I also want to thank our zonal coordinator in Port Harcourt, Olisa. I want to thank her too for a wonderful job she did to put this together in working together with the ESCO of the branch in Port Harcourt. I want to assure participants here, just like as it has been raised in the chat section, that the Institute has taken this matter up now. Thank God the #1 citizen of the Institute is here. We are taking this matter up, and we will definitely not go to rest on our horse. We ensure that we continue to engage on the issue of the environment. And when it is time for us to have another discussion, just like the moderator pointed out, we try and make sure that almost all sections involved are represented. I want to thank him. I want to join him to thank everybody. I want to thank our host, the chairman of the Port Harcourt branch, Mr. Chidi Okoro. And I also want to thank the president of the Institute, our chief host, Chief Chris Okunowo, fellow of the Institute. And of course, to our participants, I want to say a very big thank you to you for finding time to attend this event. Very soon, we'll be inviting you again as we move to the next step in this stakeholder engagement on the environment. Thank you very much, and I wish you a very wonderful time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. DG Dele Alemi, and thank you very much, everybody, and to all our friends who participated online. We'd like to draw the curtain to this conversation, and please, when we invite you next time, join us. Thank you very much.
Innocent, thank you. Very kind of you. You are deeply appreciated, and all the other members of the panel. Thank you. We should do this again soon.
Thank you, sir.
Our friends from Delta, the Honorable Commissioner from Delta, thank you very much, sir. Very kind of you.